Hello, new filming area because I decorated a bookshelf. I got it off of Facebook Marketplace and painted it and primed it. My dad would be proud. He was a painter. Welcome. Hello. Good morning. Bonjour. It is Friday, May 15th, and I'm finally filming another vlog. I have thought of vlogging, but I've not vlogged for so many reasons. Sometimes it's just because I forgot, or I'm too tired, or I don't know if it would be appropriate to vlog, but also because life has been lifing. And I decided I'd do this shorter vlog to catch you up, and it's going to be more chatty, but I have some B roll for you. Don't worry. Like I said, it's Friday, May 15th. I'm in between semesters. I finished my spring semester about May 1st, and then I'll start my summer classes next week on Monday, May 18th, technically. I'm taking two classes. One is advanced counseling skills. That's my elective and final elective that I need to have. That is on Wednesdays. It's hybrid. And then I'm taking theories of family counseling, also a requirement. And that's all online. So we'll see how that goes. It could be really confusing, or I could forget about it. Those online courses with no meetings, like they sneak up on you because there's no one there telling you that something's done or due. You just have to remember. So that's where I am academically. And I finally had some free time, some days off work to rest, recuperate. And now I'm like, okay, I can feel like I can vlog again. So I decided to catch you up. I had filmed an earlier vlog in February explaining a situation and wanted to make a vlog on how you do grad school and work when life is throwing everything at you. But as you can see, that didn't get published because I didn't finish it, or I never edited it. So yeah, back in February. It's also May, by the way. I'm just dealing with my allergies. So back in February, my dad went to the hospital for a UTI and potential kidney infection. And in the hospital, it was clear that my dad's Parkinson's had also made a larger decline. My dad has been diagnosed with Parkinson's for 11 to 12 years now. It was made clear he had been falling a lot. That is a symptom you can have when you have UTIs. It's like your balance can be off when you're older. He had been falling a lot over Christmas and in January. And so somehow, while being in the hospital for that UTI, it was made clear. What had happened is like he'd had another injury from a fall and we didn't realize it. And I guess somehow that was made clear. And so I couldn't go up there right away. I had to work. I was still within my 90 days. I didn't feel confident enough to take time off. And then, of course, you're thinking, like, my dad has had UTIs before. Not to like blast your business, dad, but he's had UTIs before. And then he was going to go to post acute rehab, post acute care, which he has also done before. This happened back in 2022. What else? So, but my dad got better. My dad got stronger. He was in a wheelchair for a little bit, but he got better. He came home. It was never like it was before he had gone to the hospital, but he was not as bad as he was when he was in the hospital or in a rehab. So, flash forward to this February of this year, 2026. My dad was in the hospital, went to post acute. While they're in the hospital, it was the first time my mom had been asked if they wanted a DNR, which is a do not resuscitate, which essentially means if my dad like chokes or I don't know, his heart stops, that they won't perform CPR or AED or whatever, any life-saving skills to use on him. Yeah. And my mom was like, "What? What?" She was kind of shocked by that question, and I was shocked by that question, and I was both like, we were both like, I was like, "No, I think he should definitely have resuscitation. I think people you should definitely try." Like, I was like, "No way. My dad's not like let's not think that far gone. No way." I was like, "Not for UTI." I was like, get him some probiotics and like and him some antibiotics and like we'll be good." Like, where's his Ukora? Not an ad. So I went to post acute care, and then I came up when he was in post acute care, and it was just heartbreaking because he was doped up on Depakote in order to not be combative, which I understand. I understand. Nurses and CNAs, you have a hard job, especially with patients that are confused, that don't know where they are, or they are, you don't deserve to be hit or bit or anything like that at work. But it was sad to see him like that because he could barely hold his head up. He could barely talk. He could barely look me in the eye. I knew he knew I was there though, but it was really heartbreaking. It was so tough to see him like that and draining. Especially thinking like, what does this mean moving forward? So that weekend I was up there visiting with him. I saw some of his siblings, my aunts and uncles, and that was the silver lining, is that post-acute rehab was in Greenville, which is where most of his siblings and in-laws live. So they came and visited him a lot while he was there for 2 weeks. So that was the silver lining. And it was still draining though, because it's an hour away from where my mom and dad live in South Carolina. And so that's a lot. And then with work and school, it was so draining because I remember crying a lot that weekend with my mom because it was just like, it was like losing another piece of my dad and mourning my mom's loss too of parts of the love of her life, even though he's still there. Um, so in the meantime, my mom chose like short-term palliative care for him. He came back home. He seemed to be doing well. He had occupational therapy. It was my mom was saying like a new normal. Like he needed more care, but he was not that bad. And so then I'd planned to come up 2 weekends. Like I work every other weekend. So I planned to come up on the weekend after when I didn't have work scheduled. And oh, also, before I get that way, that one of those Mondays when my dad was in the hospital, when my dad was in post acute, my mom also had to go to the hospital because she had chest pains and a terrible migraine and she thought she was like having a heart attack. Turns out it was just stress. And they treated her, they gave her like IV and they treated her for her migraine and like gave her stuff to help her sleep. And it was just stress from caring for my dad, and having to make all those decisions about his future and his health, understandably. So it was all, but it was also just stressful because I was in Atlanta, I was here, and I couldn't be up there quite yet. Anyway, I couldn't be up there, so that was stressful. Okay, fast forward. My dad is back at home. He seems to be doing well. Um, he has a urine test done by the nurse that comes to visit him, and she calls and says, "Hey, he's got some kind of bacteria that you have to have IV to flush out, so you have to go back to the hospital." So my dad had to go back to the hospital. So I was hoping to visit him at home. He's back in the hospital, so I visited him again. And I will say my dad was still doing pitifully. I don't know how else to say it, but better than he was at post acute. And I will say the care at the hospital, bless y'all, at the Oconee Hospital up in Seneca, South Carolina, uh, the care was excellent. It was so much better. So I that weekend I spent with them, it was still sad. I still like my heart still kind of broke, but I was able to see some family. They sent me with some goodies to give to him and he was more alert and I was able to bring him some coffee and have some coffee with him. I took an 8-week class called Orientation to Professional Practice and it was like that week I was finishing it up. So I finished up that class in the hospital room while my dad napped or watched TV. Um, Yeah. And then he came home, seemed to be doing okay, but my mom was more ready to consider hospice. She wasn't quite ready, a few weeks before that, and neither was I. I was like angry that they were considering that because I thought my dad just needed some PT and he'd get better. So then a few weeks later in March, my mom and my oldest brother met with the doctor, the hospice care doctor, and they decided that my dad would go into hospice care. My mom texted me that. It was a day that I can't remember if I worked that weekend or not, but it was a Friday. I remember dropping my nanny kid off and seeing that I had a long text from my mom to our family group chat. And she basically explained that dad would be going on hospice at home and that he sort of understood what was going on. He would have his private care home health aides that my mom had hired, and then there would be the hospice nurse that comes in and helps a few times a week or whatnot. Uh, and they would get him a hospice, like a hospital bed, and hospice covers so much more than any other stuff. So they would get him what he needs. I remember getting that text, and my boyfriend was waiting for me at my house because we were going to go to a play that night. So we were going to have dinner and then go to a play. And I remember going to him and just bawling my eyes out, telling him that my dad was on hospice. That goes to say is the big thing is my dad is on hospice. Um, I met with my therapist because I was also like in between him being put on hospice and being home from the hospital. It was kind of like, well, what, I realize I want to spend more time with my family and more time with my parents, but I just have this new job and I have to do school and I got this internship that I need to look for. And so it's like, what do I do? Like, what do I drop? What balls do I drop? What do I not? What can I keep doing? What do I need to ask for? So I talked with my therapist, and I think she helped, I guess, would say empowered me to remember like what my biggest goal was, like my best yes is what she called it. So yeah, so that being said, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to spend more time with my parents. And then I got into a car wreck and I was without a car, not for very long, but it totaled my car, and thankfully insurance did right by me, and I got a rental car for a week and I borrowed my sister's car as well. But that was so stressful. And I was really shaken up driving, even being the passenger in somebody else's car, like sitting with boyfriend and someone I trust to drive very safely. Like even then, like if a car got too close, I'd be like, and then also car searching, like going to dealerships and also looking at Facebook and trying to look at the Carfax and being like, is this a scam? Super stressful. I am happy to say I did buy a car, a Honda Civic. Her name is Beatrice. So that did work itself out. But for a couple of weeks there, it was definitely very stressful. It was even more stressful because I was like, I want to be with my parents and I can't. So, all that to say is that part of me wanted to vlog to catch everyone up and to talk about how I was doing school during all this happening. But I also have to partially say is like I kind of wasn't. So I did my work. I did kind of the bare minimum. Like I showed up. I skipped class one time, but most of the time I just kind of showed up and I barely participated. You know, those kind of questions sometimes you get that you can kind of like, if you glance at the material, you can be like, or if it's more of an opinion question, like that's where I try to get my participation points in. For group therapy, I really feel like I was just there. I have to give, we did all of our assignments through group projects. So I have to give a lot of props to my group because I feel like they took the majority of the work. I did explain to them what was happening with my dad. So they did a lot of the work and I still did my part. I wrote my parts, but I felt very mentally checked out. And then for my crisis class, we talked about grief. I think that was helpful knowing about that, knowing about anticipatory grief helped me think about like the parts I was mourning, even though it felt weird. And then my orientation class was fine. I ended that, as I said, in the hospital. And then we started my lab, and that was actually really lovely. The lab was a group process lab, and it was just meeting with other students that were taking group and just talking about anything and everything except trauma. So I didn't really go into my dad, but I was able to talk about my car wreck. Uh, and we kind of talked about anything and everything. We talked about what our first cars were. We talked about our favorite scents. We talked about the classes. We talked about finding internship. And so, also to update you, I was still looking for an internship and interviewing for internships. And I am happy to say I have landed an internship. I won't say where, but it's in my neighborhood. So I'm very excited about that. I am relieved. So, all that to say is that, like, I was somewhat mentally checked out. And with work, adjusting to work has been a huge thing. Thankfully, my boss's boss was fired. But my boss's boss said, if you need a day, But it was like, I don't know. I don't know. Like I was determined to set time aside to see my parents and see my dad, and I'm trying to remember that. But I also feel like I've gotten somewhat used to the new normal of my dad being on hospice, even though there are moments where I will cry. Um, I work with teen girls, and they are sometimes really difficult to work with, and I am definitely an amateur at it. And I just remember crying about my dad because I was like, my dad won't be here to help me with my teens. Most likely, I don't know. So that's my update for life. I have some B roll because last week was so busy. I dog sat and then I worked. I picked up a shift every day that week. So I worked that weekend and then worked Monday through Friday. And then I headed off to my parents' house for Mother's Day, which was really lovely. I got to spend time with my nephew. And then this week has been a little less busy, thank God. I spent time with nanny kids, slept in, and I'm like, been figuring out what to do with my free time. But I was like, no, I just need to savor it because next week classes start and life will be busy again. And I want to put down on my calendar when I'm going to see my parents again. But I don't know my syllabus days for the semester. Yeah. So part of it is also like trying to figure out my life of like, like I said, what balls to drop, what balls to keep. And yeah, like what do I prioritize? And at the same time, very desperately not wanting to put myself further behind in school, like very much wanting to be done with school. I feel it. I'm excited to get back into summer classes. I'm excited to start internship. It's feeling real. I am still planning on, fingers crossed, knock on wood, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I'm hoping to go to the south of France once I graduate with some girlfriends. And so I've been saving for that. It's a mixture of like trying to plan life and then also be happy in the present. So many moving things because I'm like, I don't want to. I want good things in my life and I want to be able to pursue stuff, and at the same time, I don't want my schedule so full that I can't leave and be with my parents when it's time. And part of me is like, you might have to do that anyway. So I don't know how to end this section as I'm sharing that. But life has been lifing for sure. Work, school, family, figuring out what to prioritize, what to not, how to do it, how to have the courage to ask for what I need, like a day off to visit the family, you know. Now I'm just rambling. But anyway, that's been my update for my life this past spring semester. I'm kind of adjusting to a new normal, I have to say. And my dad told me to stay positive and keep looking up. So I'm going to try to do that.